The shrill ringing of my phone jolted me awake as I scrambled to silence the alarm. Not again, I muttered, stumbling out of bed. I had overslept for the third time this week, a cardinal sin in the cutthroat world of corporate finance. As I hastily dressed and rushed out the door, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that today was going to be anything but ordinary. Upon arrival at the office, I was met with a stern summons from the HR director, Karen. Steeling myself for the impending reprimand, I knocked on her door and entered, greeted by her icy glare. "Sit down, Emily," she commanded, her voice dripping with disdain. "I've been reviewing the attendance records, and I'm frankly appalled by your recent tardiness. This is unacceptable behavior for someone in your position." I opened my mouth to explain, but she raised a manicured hand, silencing me. "I don't want to hear your excuses. You're setting a poor example for the rest of the team, and it's simply not good enough. I have no choice but to issue you a formal warning." As she slid the document across the desk, I felt my heart sink. This wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was a black mark on my record that could jeopardize my future at the firm. Panic surged through me, and I struggled to find the right words. "Karen, please," I pleaded. "I know I've been late a few times, but I can assure you it won't happen again. My grandmother—" "I don't care about your grandmother," she snapped, cutting me off. "Frankly, I'm tired of your constant tardiness and the excuses that come with it. You're a valuable employee, but I can't have someone who can't even manage to show up on time. This is your last warning, Emily. One more slip-up, and you're out." With that, she dismissed me, leaving me stunned and reeling in the hallway. I knew Karen had a reputation for being a hard-nosed, unyielding boss, but I never expected her to be so merciless. As I trudged back to my desk, my mind raced with worry and frustration. How could I convince her that this was a one-time slip-up? And what if it happened again? As the day wore on, I found it increasingly difficult to focus on my work. The weight of Karen's warning hung heavy on my mind, and I found myself glancing at the clock every few minutes, acutely aware of every passing minute. By the time the workday ended, I was mentally exhausted, my nerves frayed. As I gathered my belongings and headed for the exit, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of resentment toward Karen. Surely she could see that I was a dedicated, hard-working employee who simply had a bit of bad luck. Why was she being so unforgiving? I shook my head, determined to put the incident behind me and focus on doing my job to the best of my ability. Little did I know, however, that this was just the beginning of a much larger and more complicated situation, one that would put my entire career, and my very future, on the line. The next few days passed in a blur as I redoubled my efforts to arrive at the office on time. I set multiple alarms, planned my commute to the minute, and even started going to bed earlier, all in an attempt to avoid another confrontation with Karen. My hard work seemed to pay off, and for the next 2 weeks, I managed to maintain a perfect attendance record. I'd even caught myself smiling triumphantly as I breezed past Karen's office, secure in the knowledge that I had proven myself. However, my moment of celebration was short-lived. One morning, as I was making my way to the coffee machine, I overheard a group of my colleagues engaged in a heated discussion. "Can you believe Karen's latest stunt?" one of them, Sarah, exclaimed. "I know. She's completely out of line this time," another chimed in. Intrigued, I approached the group, trying to appear casual. "What's going on?" I asked, feigning ignorance. Sarah turned to me, her eyes wide. "Oh, Emily, you haven't heard? Karen accused one of the interns of stealing from the company and had him escorted out of the building by security. Can you believe it?" I felt my stomach drop. "What? That's terrible. Do we know what happened?" Another colleague, James, shook his head. "Not much. All we know is that Karen spotted the intern taking some office supplies and immediately reported him to the higher-ups. They reviewed the security footage and fired him on the spot." I stood there stunned. The very thought of someone losing their job over a petty theft accusation filled me with a sense of dread. That's awful. I can't imagine how terrified that poor intern must have felt. Sarah nodded in agreement. Exactly. And the worst part is, Karen didn't even give him a chance to explain himself. She just went straight for the jugular. As the group dispersed, I remained rooted to the spot, my mind racing. If Karen was willing to go to such lengths over a minor incident, I couldn't help but wonder what she might do if I slipped up again. The thought of losing my job, my hard-earned reputation, and the life I had built for myself filled me with a sense of foreboding. I knew I had to be extra vigilant from that point on. No more excuses, no more mistakes. I had to be the perfect employee, no matter what. And as I made my way back to my desk, a small, determined voice in the back of my mind whispered, "You can't let her win." Over the next few weeks, I worked tirelessly to maintain my impeccable attendance record, arriving at the office early and leaving late. I avoided any and all interactions with Karen, steering clear of her office and keeping my head down during meetings. My colleagues noticed a change in my behavior, but no one dared to comment on it, knowing how ruthless Karen could be. As the months passed, I slowly began to relax, convinced that I had finally proven myself worthy in Karen's eyes. I even allowed myself to entertain the idea of a well-deserved promotion, or at the very least, a glowing performance review. However, my sense of security was shattered one day when I arrived at the office to find a somber-faced HR representative waiting for me at my desk. "Emily, could you come with me, please?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart pounding, I followed her to a small conference room, where Karen was already seated, her lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. "Emily, please have a seat," she said, her tone clipped and formal. I sank into the chair, my mind racing with possibilities. Had I done something wrong? Was this about another tardiness incident? As the HR representative began to speak, the reality of the situation slowly dawned on me. "Emily, we've received a report that you've been engaged in some concerning behavior. Specifically, we've been informed that you've been accessing confidential company files without authorization." I felt the blood drain from my face as I struggled to comprehend what was happening. What? That's impossible. I would never do something like that. There must be some mistake. Karen leaned forward, her eyes narrowed. "I'm afraid there's no mistake, Emily. We have evidence that you've been accessing sensitive financial records and sharing them with unauthorized parties." I opened my mouth to protest, but the HR representative cut me off. "I'm sorry, Emily, but we have no choice but to terminate your employment, effective immediately. Your actions are a clear breach of our company's policies, and we simply cannot overlook this kind of behavior." As they escorted me out of the building, I was in a state of shock, my mind reeling. How could this be happening? I had done nothing wrong, and yet, here I was, losing the job I had worked so hard to keep. As I stood on the sidewalk, watching the familiar office building fade from view, a single, overwhelming thought consumed me. I had to clear my name. Karen had gone too far, and I was determined to prove my innocence, no matter the cost. The days following my abrupt termination were a blur of anger, confusion, and determination. I replayed the events in my mind, searching for any clue that could help me uncover the truth. Had Karen somehow framed me? It seemed almost too outrageous to be true, and yet, the more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that she was behind this. I scoured my apartment, looking for any evidence that could corroborate my story. As I rummaged through my belongings, a sudden realization struck me: the security camera in my living room. I had installed it a few months ago after a rash of burglaries in the neighborhood, and it might just hold the key to proving my innocence. With renewed energy, I retrieved the footage and began meticulously combing through it, searching for any activity during the time frame in question. As I fast-forwarded through the recordings, my heart raced, hoping against hope that I would find something, anything, that could clear my name. And then, just as I was about to give up, I saw it, a figure in the distance, slipping through my front door and disappearing into the darkness. I replayed the footage, my fingers trembling, as I caught a glimpse of the intruder's face. It was Karen. I felt a surge of triumph, quickly followed by a wave of dread. If Karen had been in my apartment, she must have accessed my computer and planted the evidence that led to my dismissal. The realization that she had gone to such lengths to frame me only fueled my determination to expose her. Without hesitation, I rushed to the police station, clutching the security footage in my hands. The officers listened to my story, their expressions ranging from skepticism to disbelief, but I refused to back down. I knew the truth, and I was willing to fight tooth and nail to prove it. As the investigation unfolded, I found myself navigating a complex web of bureaucracy and legal technicalities. Karen, it seemed, had powerful connections within the company, and she was using every trick in the book to cover her tracks. But I was relentless, determined to see this through no matter the cost. Day after day, I pored over the evidence, piecing together the puzzle and building a case that would ultimately bring Karen's deception to light. And as the days turned into weeks, I began to feel a glimmer of hope. Hope that justice would prevail, and that I would be able to reclaim the life that had been so cruelly snatched away from me. As the investigation dragged on, I found myself growing increasingly frustrated with the slow pace of the proceedings. Every day felt like a battle, with Karen's formidable legal team throwing up roadblocks at every turn. They seemed determined to bury the truth, and I couldn't help but wonder if they were being paid off to do so. Despite the setbacks, I refused to give up. I poured my heart and soul into building the case, meticulously combing through the evidence and leaving no stone unturned. The security footage from my apartment was the linchpin of my defense, and I knew that if I could just get it in front of the right people, it would blow the lid off of Karen's deceitful scheme. One day, as I was meeting with the lead investigator, a glimmer of hope emerged. He had managed to obtain a warrant to search Karen's office, and the results of the search were startling. Not only did they find the very office supplies that the intern had been accused of stealing, but they also uncovered a trove of incriminating documents and emails that linked Karen directly to the cover-up. "This is it," the investigator said, his eyes alight with triumph. "We've got her dead to rights. We're going to make sure she pays for what she's done." I felt a surge of relief, but it was quickly tempered by a sense of unease. After all, I knew that Karen was a formidable adversary, and she wouldn't go down without a fight. As the investigation continued, it became clear that she was pulling out all the stops to try and discredit the evidence and cast doubt on the integrity of the proceedings. But I refused to be intimidated. I knew that the truth was on my side, and I was determined to see this through to the end, no matter the personal cost. I spent countless hours poring over the evidence, meeting with lawyers, and strategizing with the investigators, all while trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy in my life. And then, just when it seemed like the tide was turning in my favor, a bombshell revelation rocked the case. The security footage from my apartment had been tampered with, and the incriminating footage of Karen had been erased. It was a devastating blow, and I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. As I grappled with the implications of this new development, I couldn't help but wonder if Karen had somehow managed to stay one step ahead of us all along. Had she anticipated our moves and taken steps to cover her tracks? The thought made my blood run cold, and I knew that I had to find a way to turn the tables on her once and for all. As the investigation hit another roadblock, I found myself sinking deeper into despair. The revelation that the security footage had been tampered with had shaken my confidence, and I couldn't help but feel that Karen was always one step ahead of us. However, just when I was about to give up hope, a surprising turn of events unfolded. During a routine review of the company's IT systems, one of the investigators stumbled upon a startling discovery: a hidden camera that had been installed in the HR department. "This changes everything," the lead investigator said, his face alight with excitement. The camera footage from this device could be the key to unraveling Karen's entire scheme. With renewed vigor, the investigation team pored over the footage, meticulously combing through every frame for any clues that could help us crack the case. And as they delved deeper, a picture began to emerge, a picture of Karen's calculated and ruthless plan to frame me. The footage showed Karen accessing my computer during the time that the confidential files were allegedly accessed. It also revealed her tampering with the security footage from my apartment, cleverly erasing the incriminating evidence that could have exposed her. "This is it," the investigator said, his voice trembling with excitement. "We've got her. We're going to make sure she pays for what she's done." Armed with this new evidence, the team quickly moved to build their case, working tirelessly to ensure that every detail was airtight. They interviewed witnesses, collected additional documentation, and left no stone unturned in their pursuit of the truth. And as the pressure mounted on Karen, I could see the cracks beginning to show. She had always been so confident, so assured of her own invincibility, but now she seemed to be unraveling. The weight of her own misdeeds was taking its toll, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived, and I sat in the courtroom, my heart pounding in my chest. As the evidence was presented, I watched as Karen's composure crumbled, her carefully crafted facade crumbling under the weight of the damning proof. In the end, the verdict was clear. Karen had been exposed as a conniving, manipulative liar, and her scheme to frame me had been thoroughly dismantled. She was stripped of her position and faced criminal charges, while I was exonerated and offered my job back, with a glowing recommendation and a generous settlement. As I walked out of the courthouse, I felt a sense of relief and triumph wash over me. I had fought tooth and nail to clear my name, and in the end, justice had prevailed. And as I looked back on the ordeal, I couldn't help but feel a newfound appreciation for the power of perseverance and the importance of never giving up, no matter how daunting the odds may seem. With Karen's downfall and my name finally cleared, I should have felt a sense of unbridled joy and relief. After all, I had endured a grueling, months-long battle to prove my innocence and reclaim my life. But as I settled back into my old routine at the office, I couldn't shake the lingering feeling of unease. The ordeal had taken a heavy toll, both emotionally and mentally. The stress of constantly looking over my shoulder, the frustration of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, and the sheer exhaustion of fighting against a formidable opponent had left me drained. I found it difficult to fully trust my colleagues, even those who had steadfastly supported me throughout the ordeal. Worst of all, the scars of my experience had left a lasting impact on my confidence and self-esteem. I had always prided myself on being a capable, reliable employee, but now I found myself constantly second-guessing my decisions and questioning my abilities. The haunting specter of Karen's betrayal had shaken me to my core, and I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever be able to regain the same level of trust and respect that I had once enjoyed. As I grappled with these emotions, I found solace in the support of my closest friends and family. They had stood by me throughout the entire ordeal, offering unwavering encouragement and a shoulder to lean on when the weight became too much to bear. Their unwavering belief in my innocence and their steadfast determination to see me through the darkest moments were a constant source of strength. Slowly, with their help, I began to rebuild my sense of self-worth and confidence. I threw myself into my work, determined to prove that I was still the same capable, hard-working individual that I had always been. And as my colleagues welcomed me back with open arms, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and belonging. But even as I regained my footing, a part of me couldn't help but wonder what had become of Karen. Had she truly faced the consequences of her actions, or had she managed to slither her way out of the mess she had created? The thought of her potentially escaping unscathed filled me with a lingering sense of unease, a nagging worry that she might one day try to seek revenge. As I grappled with these concerns, I realized that I needed to find a way to move forward, to let go of the anger and fear that had consumed me for so long. And so, I made a conscious decision to focus on the positive, on the people and experiences that had sustained me through the darkest of times, and on the newfound appreciation for the fragility and preciousness of my own life. It was a difficult journey, but with the support of those around me, I slowly began to heal, to rebuild, and to reclaim the sense of joy and purpose that had once been so integral to my identity. And as I looked to the future, I couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of optimism, a belief that no matter what challenges I might face, I had the strength and resilience to overcome them. As the weeks turned into months, I gradually found myself settling back into the rhythm of my work and my life. The scars of the ordeal I had endured still lingered, but they had begun to fade, replaced by a newfound sense of resilience and a deeper appreciation for the people and experiences that truly mattered. Yet, a part of me couldn't help but wonder about the fate of Karen, the woman who had so callously tried to destroy my career and my reputation. I had heard whispers around the office, snippets of information that suggested she had been forced to resign in disgrace, her once formidable reputation in tatters. But as satisfying as that thought was, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. So one day, I decided to do a little digging, to see if I could uncover the truth about what had happened to my former adversary. What I discovered was both shocking and deeply satisfying. It turned out that Karen's downfall had been even more spectacular than I could have imagined. Not only had she been forced to resign from the company, but she had also been the subject of a high-profile criminal investigation. Charges of fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice had been leveled against her, and she now faced the very real prospect of serving time in prison. As I read the news reports, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. Karen's carefully constructed facade of power and influence had crumbled, and the truth of her misdeeds had been laid bare for all to see. It was a stark reminder that even the most formidable and seemingly untouchable individuals were not immune to the consequences of their actions. But even as I reveled in the knowledge of Karen's downfall, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity. After all, she had once been a respected and influential figure in the company, and her fall from grace had been nothing short of spectacular. The thought of her facing the very real prospect of a lengthy prison sentence was a sobering one, a reminder that even the most ruthless of individuals are ultimately human, with their own hopes, fears, and vulnerabilities. As I reflected on the events that had unfolded, I realized that the true victory lay not in Karen's downfall, but in my own ability to emerge from the ordeal stronger and more resilient than ever before. The months of struggle and uncertainty had forged me into a more confident, determined, and self-assured individual, one who was better equipped to navigate the challenges and uncertainties of the world. And as I looked to the future, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and optimism. The scars of the past had healed, and I was ready to embrace the next chapter of my life, confident in the knowledge that no matter what obstacles might lie ahead, I had the strength and the determination to overcome them.